Just want to remind you guys, this episode is presented by Prize Picks. Download the app today. Use the code JUICE to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. All right, we are back. What is going on, Colts Nation? And welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Your guys, of course, Cody and Derek, back with another one, guys. Well, guys, the NFL Draft is come and go by now. We're not quite a month out from the NFL Draft, still a couple weeks removed from it. But with that, Derek, wanted to kind of talk about this idea of what the Colts did in this draft that some people have been talking about that I think's definitely worth a conversation, right? And you see specifically with how the Colts, I feel like last year, but even more this year, have really made it clear what their focus was here in terms of their draft picks. And I think it's distinguishedly different than it's been in years past. So without further ado, let's jump right into this, Derek. The word that I am thinking of is a simple word. We hear it all the time: production. This class, Derek, especially compared to 2023, even in some ways 2024, it's different because you look at all of the players that the Colts drafted here in this 2025 NFL draft, and pretty much all over the board, outside of maybe one or two, these are productive players at their positions, right? These are guys that were doing some really, really good things at the collegiate level in 2024. I mean, pretty much everybody you look at, there's something that stands out, or multiple things that stand out with these players. And obviously you talk about Tyler Warren. That's the most obvious one, Derek. I mean, over 100 catches, over 1,200 yards, 8 receiving touchdowns. We know what he also can do in the ground game as well. That's just his receiving stats. So he definitely is kind of the pinnacle for this in terms of production. He was the most productive tight end in college football last year by a wide margin. So what were your thoughts there when it comes to just how the Colts have attacked this draft and how they kind of set the tone there with their first round pick?
Yeah, so of course, we've seen a lot of times where Chris Ballard has, gone with the potential of a player in the first round. One that particularly comes to mind with me is Kwity Paye. When he was drafted in 2021, was not a guy that, we thought was the most productive guy in college, but certainly showed the traits that could develop into that. And, that just went with the territory of a lot of first round draft picks, when it came to Chris Ballard. But this one was just a shoe-in situation for you because you saw that even when Tyler Warren, who, I mean, again, by all accounts, has not been a tight end for insanely long, is a guy that, when he was in Penn State, I mean, not only did he have a great productive season, I mean, he had one of the most productive seasons in college football history. It was on par with Harold Fannin that year. Him and Harold Fannin both had historic years as tight ends. It might have been one of the best seasons ever in college football for tight ends and how much they contributed. And of course, Tyler Warren did all of that, Cody, knowing farewell and everyone knowing that Tyler Warren was going to be a focal point in the offense, and yet they still couldn't stop him. So again, just goes to show you that this guy is continuing to learn and is going to continue to get better. And if this guy has room for improvement, then, I mean, this is incredible because, again, the 104 catches, 1,250 yards, 8 touchdowns last season. I mean, that's a phenomenal stat from Tyler Warren. And, I mean, the rushing numbers also get included into that. I mean, this is just a phenomenal player that just can be utilized in a lot of different ways, Cody, and that's why it's such a great thing to see for them.
Yeah, over 1,400 total yards and 12 touchdowns in total for Tyler Warren a year ago. So that's definitely impressive. And I think you're absolutely right, Derek. When you're looking at, just think about the Colts' previous draft picks. Throw out Leatu Latu for a second. Let's think 2023 and before that, right? Like Anthony Richardson, it was a lot of physical tools, right? It was a lot of that what the Colts were betting on. You mentioned Kwity Paye, same way. I was looking at his stats. I didn't realize how poor from a sack standpoint Kwity Paye was coming out of college, but it was very, very unimpressive, to be honest with you. He only had 2 sacks in his final year at Michigan, which is saying something. And obviously, the next guy we'll talk about had 10 plus more sacks than that last year. So just kind of interesting how the last 2 picks for the Colts, they've been pretty productive in their last year of college, whereas the last 2 previous to that in 2023 and 2021 were the complete opposite, right? It was a lot more on the physical tools, but it does kind of feel like the Indianapolis Colts have kind of married those because let's be honest, Leatu Latu and Tyler Warren, they're also very physically gifted as well, right? But it's kind of that marriage of the two there when it comes to that. So that's definitely a change there for Chris Ballard in the last 2 years in the first round. But Derek, also, there still were a few hints of that last year, especially with a guy like Adonai Mitchell, all the talent in the world, but didn't have crazy, crazy production a year ago or in his last year at Texas. He didn't have that, in 2023 at Texas, right? So, but when you look at the Indianapolis Colts second round pick this year, it was a lot more of the production, going back to that production again with JTT. 12 and a half sacks, 22 tackles for loss. I think it was 6 sacks or so in the playoffs alone. So when you look at this guy, Derek, it's a lot more production here on top of the physical tools beyond the first round. A little bit different than you did, even last year.
Yeah, 100%. And, again, you go into this process and there's a lot of different ways that you can attack the draft in, player falls that you felt like, maybe you could have taken in the first round if you wanted to. And, they fall to where you get in the second round and you just can't help yourself. You're willing to overlook some of the character flaws or even other flaws that these guys have when it comes to the film or it was their interviews or whatever. But when you're talking
Even
about
production to a little bit, right? Even production, like, I was just looking at Adonai Mitchell. He had like 800 yards and 11 touchdowns, but it wasn't like he was a 1,500-yard receiver, right? Like, it wasn't anything crazy like that. It was a lot of projection there. The talent, like you said, was a lot there, and the Colts felt like they needed to take it. But it was different this year. But sorry, keep going.
No, you're good. Yeah, and of course, that goes into a lot of different things, but there was 2 things that the Colts really tried to remain very big on in this draft, and it's very evident. That was production and character traits. That was the 2 biggest things there. And going into the other guys that we're going to talk about. But yeah, of course, Tyler Warren fits the exact mold of what you want in a football player, a guy that's all about ball, and he was a stud in college. As we said, guys, today's episode is sponsored by Prize Picks. Now, what is Prize Picks? Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Instead of battling against thousands of other players across platforms, you're basically picking 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you're choosing more or less on those stat projections to be able to watch those winnings roll in. It's very easy. Do you guys want to play along at some of Prize Picks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and UFC fighter Sugar Sean O'Malley? Well, if you guys sign up today, you can find the community plays under the promos tab of the app to view the entries of some of the biggest names on the platform and be a part of that as well. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000 just like that with NBA, NHL, and college basketball entries today on Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. Like a lot of other things, guys, they also offer injury insurance. So your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. So if someone exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player projection won't count against you and the rest of your entry stays live. So it's great bounce back for that one. What I love about the app as well, guys, is it's not just sports like NBA, NHL, football, and tennis, and baseball, and all these other things, but there's also a lot of others that go into it as well. If you like to place entries on video game situations like Call of Duty, CS2, Apex, if that's something that appeals to you, there's a wide variety of sports and video games and everything else that you can place entries on. And I love how expansive it is. Even just looking at the NBA, there's entries you can make with turnovers, with points. You can do combo deals, dunks, field goals attempted, all of these different things. So there's just so many different ways to make money off of these entries. Be sure to download the app today and use the code JUICE to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, and then when you talk about even a guy like Justin Walley, who a lot of people were like, what in the world? Why'd the Colts take him in the third round? You pull out some of the stats, you're like, okay, that's actually pretty decent, right? 42% completion percentage a year ago, quarterback rating of 54. Over the last 2 years, he's had 10 pass breakups. So, yeah, while a lot of people thought it was maybe a little bit early for him, he has been productive in his time with Minnesota the last 2 years. So this is a kid that, maybe he has a little bit of undersize in terms of like the typical Ballard corner that we're used to. But, I mean, this kid's definitely got some pretty crazy production against some pretty decent competition in the Big Ten. So it's not like this kid, say, for example, Mike Abraham a year ago, where he's playing against these, nobody schools a lot of times, right? Like, he's actually legitimately playing against, like, real NFL competition, right? A lot of times. Like, he's playing against Ohio State. He's playing against Michigan. He's playing against some of these, elite programs there, and he's holding his own. So that's definitely very impressive there when you're looking at Justin Walley. And again, another guy who very, very productive last year in college. Well, maybe the interception numbers don't stand out. He only had 2. When you look a little bit deeper at some of the more important stats like completion percentage, quarterback rating against, all those things stand out, Derek.
Yeah, 100%, man.
And then when you're looking, even a little bit later in the draft, right? So say outside of the first 3 rounds, you're looking at round 4 and round 5, with guys like Jalen Travis, who only allowed 1 sack last year and almost 500 pass snaps. And then also DJ Giddens, Derek, over 1,300 yards a year ago. And even the last 2 seasons. And last year, 6.5 yards per carry. I mean, all these guys, Derek, in the first 5 rounds, and you could even throw like Hunter Wohler in there as well because of what he did at Wisconsin. He led the Badgers in tackles, and also he had a 90 coverage grade as well as a safety. And now he's going to take that down to linebacker. So pretty much throughout this entire draft, you notice that common theme that you mentioned already, right? The production and the character. Those are some big things. Some guys that led their teams, led their respective units, led their respective side of the balls, honestly. So it's very impressive, man. I can't rave enough about just how the Colts have been able to kind of marry the two. And, it's just like it leads to the question, does that mean you're going to get a bigger impact on day one from these guys, right? Because you didn't necessarily always get that last year. I mean, let's face it, like your draft class, at least from the first season, it was a little bit disappointing in 2024. Now,
yeah,
of course, it was only year 1, so there's a lot of room for growth here. But, this is a big year. We've said it a lot. It's a big year for Chris Ballard. It's a big year for Shane Steichen. It's a big year for a lot of people. So you need that impact from day one. You need this class to stand out.
And to add to your point of talking about getting more out of the picks that you're getting, I mean, even in 2023, what are we talking about? We had 12 draft picks, Cody. And yep. I mean, I can, without remembering every single name that was on there, I mean, I'm fairly certain that like almost half of the guys that were drafted by the Colts that year are no longer on the team, or at least close to that. I mean, it's not always about getting more picks. It's not about getting more players, especially late in drafts, trying to deal with that. It's not something that's much needed. It's more of just finding the quality guys that are going to go out there. I would much rather have 3 or 4 extremely high quality players that you draft every year than have 7 or 8 players drafted and only 1 or 2 of those guys is ever going to play anything sort of significant to improve this team. There's no point in drafting a 5th round corner, Cody, if that 5th round corner it's just gonna get cut by training camp. Like that's and that's a shout out at Darius Rush that Ballard let go very quickly. Regardless if he deserved it or not, didn't matter. He still did it. And and that's why I'm kind of glad that the Colts didn't play this grand mind scheme where they were trading back every other pick and all these things like that. But I mean, you have a Tyler Warren who's gonna play right away and be a stud. You have a JT Tuimoloau that is going to play a role in whatever it is he does. Justin Walley's going to go in there. He may not play a ton right away, but he is going to be a secondary guy, and he is going to play special teams. Jalen Travis, he certainly has a chance to be that swing tackle that when something happens to one of our tackles, he's going to be the first guy brought in there. DJ Giddens has a very big chance to be potential running back 2, see a few snaps this year. Smith, who you drafted late from Alabama, could potentially be that 3 tech or that 1 tech defensive tackle that the Colts are looking for. So you drafted a lot of these guys that, you're looking for a lot of these guys to play some significant or have some significant roles in 2025.
And you absolutely need them to, right? You have to get a productive, like with your tight ends last year. Your tight ends were terrible. You need Tyler Warren to come in, and you need him to be 10 times the upgrade that your tight ends were. That's not very hard, but you know what I mean? Like, you need to notice, like, instant impact from these players, right? You need to have that at the positions that were honestly killers for you last year, right? So you need your secondary to play better. You need your pass rush to be more consistent. You need your tight ends to be better from a receiving standpoint, right? You need all these things. You need your RB2 and RB3 to be better than they were a year ago, right? You need all these things from the guys that you brought in to raise the bar and honestly raise your floor as a team and potentially push your ceiling higher as well. So yeah, there is a ton here from this class, but I definitely think that you can't go wrong with the production of this group. And again, we'll have to see how it translates because it doesn't always translate, right? Sometimes guys are super productive in college. It doesn't translate. But I think this is kind of the best route the Colts could have gone from a draft standpoint. It's just taking very productive players in college who have done it at the collegiate level and see if you can get it to translate to the NFL level. And if the Colts can do that, I mean, if this draft class can be a top 10 draft class, Derek, that could very well save a lot of people's jobs here.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And you certainly hope that these guys can go in and, have that big role and do some big things and, be able to actually be a lot more productive in this draft class than what we have seen in a lot of recent draft classes from Chris Ballard. Like you said, the last couple have not been very good. Even some of the guys that are still on this team and still are, building names for themselves, still a couple of those guys have just continued to keep getting injured. So, your best draft pick that you have had in the last 2 seasons has been Josh Downs, and he was a 3rd rounder. So you're right. Your 2nd round corner from that year has been injured back-to-back seasons and hasn't been available. I mean, again, that's not really Ballard's fault. He can't really, take into account that, but still, you're right. Your best 2 draft picks over the last 2 years. I would argue even the last 3 years, Cody, has been you're a third round wide receiver, which Josh Downs has lived up to expectations and more, and Jalen Jones, who nobody thought could have been as good as he is right now. So, yeah, I mean, things have definitely got to get better. And, you got to hope that these productive players who are also veterans that are coming in with a lot of leadership and a lot of knowledge and understanding of the game are going to come in and, be able to fit in right away and do their thing.
Yep, absolutely. The time is now. There is no more room for patience with Chris Ballard and this group. So we'll have to see if the rookies can come in and be productive at the NFL level like they were at the collegiate level. But guys, let us know your thoughts here on this draft class and how the Colts kind of addressed it and went after more of the productive players and the character players and kind of found kind of the middle ground, if you will, between talent and production. So let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. But guys, that'll do it for this one. If you haven't already, be sure to smash that like button, hit subscribe, turn on the notification bell, all that good stuff. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, guys, go Colts.